Oh, she forgot her password. Okay. Okay, so I did two different bowl cozies, I'm going to call it, I guess, or mitt. I'm going to call it a bowl mitt. And I'm going to show you how to do the difference. So this one, if you have a more shallow bowl, and this one, if you have a deeper bowl. So if you should buy some kind of pretty bowl for somebody, and you want to make this to go with it, you can make it to that bowl, to that depth of that bowl. Okay, so both of these started with two 10-inch squares of fabric. Now, if you're going to put these in the microwave oven, you have to use 100% cotton fabric, 100% cotton thread. I use Aurifil. You have to be careful that some threads might be cotton, but they have a poly cover to them. So you have to make sure that they're 100% cotton. Let's get something besides me in the picture here. There we go. Also, the batting. A lot of batting say 100% cotton, but they're not actually 100% cotton because they do have some glue or poly stuff that binds that batting together. So the safest thing is, and I believe it's made by Warm and Natural. It's called Wrap and Zap, WRAPNZAP. Denise, would you mind typing that in the comments? I can't, because I can't quite reach over to there. So if you're going to put it in the microwave, you have to use that Wrap and Zap batting. Bossel makes one, and it'll say right on the Bossel is BOSAL. They make one. I can't think of the name of it. I just ordered some to see how it works out, but it'll say right on the package, microwave safe. Now, microwave safe doesn't mean you're going to put it in there for a half hour with a casserole dish in it. It's really just like a 3 or 4 minute thing. I don't use these in my microwave because I find that when I try to take the whole thing out of the microwave, I end up spilling more of it inside of this than if I just use mitts to take it out. But then I put it in this bowl. And also, you can put your bowl of ice cream in here. Anything cold or hot, or just to make it look nice. You could have your salad in your bowl in this. Okay. Hi, Alberta. Even though it says Anthony. Hi, Anthony, Alberta. Okay, so let's get started. So again, two 10-inch squares, 100%. Let me move this one for a minute. Two 10-inch squares, 100% cotton. Two 10-inch squares of batting, Wrap and Zap, or a microwave safe batting. Don't just go by the 100% on the package because that's not always so. 100% cotton thread. Sewing thread is fine. Aurifil makes, a lot of the quilt stores have Aurifil thread, and that's 100% cotton. You could use the Sulky blendables or 30-weight blendables or solids. Those are 100% cotton. I'm using Aurifil, just regular sewing thread, and I've used that for the quilting as well as excuse me, the quilting, the decorative stitches, as well as sewing it together. So this actually goes together pretty fast. So you could make, this is the first of your gifts for Christmas. So I have my, oh, I have more than I want right there. Hold on. So I have my fabric, my 10-inch square, my batting 10-inch square. And you can really make this any size if you want. If you wanted to put it under your dinner plates, or you had a smaller bowl, bigger bowl. I think I'm going to try to design one for a cup because I think it'll help keep my tea warmer. And when I do that, I'll be happy to share that with you. And all I'm doing is I'm just scooching the ends of the fabric over so they line up with the batting. If you keep picking the batting up, the fabric up, it's easy to just kind of scooch it along. So the first thing I'm going to stitch is I'm going to go from corner to corner, corner to corner. If you need to draw a line, you can. So I'll draw a line. My ruler's not quite big enough, but so if you want to do this with a line, it's fine. You can use your laser if you want to, if you have a laser. When I do my next line, I can look across my ruler and take one of these lines going across and line it up with that line that I just drew. Today I'm using an air erase pen, so I don't have to iron it or anything. The thing is it will go away in a little while. Not that quick, but in a little while. Also, so I'm going to stitch in both diagonals first. Oh, let me put my pen on. I just have my J foot on. I'm going to put my pivot on. So if you have pivot, put your pivot on. I'm quilting, so I'm going to set my stitch length a little bigger. Normally my stitch length is 2.5. I'm going to set my stitch length to 3. Not 2, 3. Because I like a little bit longer stitch. And I'll try to do this without my hand in too much of the way. And you notice, even though my hand was arms anyway, but I held on to that until it was done stitching. And I am going to lock it at the end. Just because I'm moving it around a lot. I lock at the beginning and the end. I'm moving around a lot. So, excuse me. So I don't want my little ends to come undone. Just trying to keep my hand out of the way and sew it and hold on at the same time. Okay, so I've done my stitching across, and let's see if you can see. Can you see that stitching there? So it's just a little bit bigger. Now I'm going to go a little bit longer. I'm sorry. Now I'm going to go this way. So I have a couple options. I could measure it. So I'm on my little board here, and I know it's 10 inches, so I could mark it at the 5. And I didn't do very well lining up or following my line the other time. Or I can just put a little clip in at the 5. Oh. Or a little notch. Or I can fold it and give it a little crease. So whatever way you want to do it. Or just eyeball it. Again, I'm going to lock. You want to get as close to that center as possible because that's where your dart's going to go. But it's for a bowl, not your prom dress. So just do your best. And now I'm going to come down the opposite way. So now I've just done this one. Now I'm coming down this way. Okay, so now, not sure. So now you can see I have stitches going this way, this way, this way, this way, and hopefully they'll all meet in the middle. But I wasn't really perfect about it. Now I got my other one already done, so you didn't have to watch me do that twice. So I just want to make sure that they end up being the same size. And I want to make sure that I don't have, for example, right here, and you see I have batting past my fabric. So I can go ahead and trim that off. Oh, I guess I better turn my whole mat. And I'm just going to check all the sides and make sure everybody's on. I don't want to, also, I don't want to have, so here I have more fabric than batting. So I'm going to trim that too. Excuse me. So I want to make sure my two pieces are the same size. And they are. So if they weren't, I would go ahead and make them the same size. So now I'm going to set one aside for the moment. So now we're going to talk about the darts. So I'm going to fold it right side together, and I should be folding right on that stitch line. And I'm going to put this on my mat so that I can see. Let me use my other pen so you can see better probably. I can see right here, I'm putting this line, this fold is right on the end of an inch line, and going across this way is right on the line of the inches, so I can just work from that. So when I did, if you want to write this down, when I did this one, I went a 1/2 inch in, so a 1/2 inch, oh, get that out of the way, a 1/2 inch in from your folded edge, and I think it was 1.5 inches down. And I'll show you how we'll connect them. On this one, I went the full inch in, so 1 inch in, and 1.5 inches to almost 2 inches down. So that's what gives you more depth. So this one I'm going to do, I'm going to go 3/4 and make a mark. And I'm going to come down 3/4 and make a mark. Oh, see my, so I mean 1 3/4, I'm sorry. So 1 3/4 down and 3/4 across. And then I just have to connect those two lines, or those two marks. See? Now you always want to make this mark on the side where the fold is. I don't want to put it this way and the fold's over here, because I'm going to run it through my machine. So I want it so the edge, the fold is on the right, the fabric is on my left. So when I go to this side, I can't just turn it around because I'm backwards now. So I would just flip it over. So again, my fold is on the right, my fabric's on the left. I'm going to mark it at 3/4, and I'm going to come down 1 3/4. And I'm just using the ruler. on the mat for that. And then I'm just going to connect those lines. Okay, so now I have one here and I have one here. Now I'm going to open this up and fold in the other direction. So now my marks are over here, and I'm going to be marking these two sides. Get that fuzz keeps following me around. Again, I'm folding where my stitching was. I'm putting my fold on a line. My fold is on the right, fabric is on the left. I'm going to mark it 3/4 and 1 3/4. And I don't really need a ruler. I can just kind of just go down like that. So then I'm going to flip it over. And again, I'm going to mark it at the 3/4, 1 3/4. And let me see if I can do this without holding it. And then I'm just connecting the two lines. So it's the same as a dart, like in a dress or a top. Okay? So I'm going to go through all this, and then I'll do it again on the other piece in case there was something you didn't understand. Excuse me. So now I'm going to stitch, starting at the wide side and coming down. I want to make sure I lock it here and I lock it at the end. And my goal is, let me see if I can take a pin. My goal is to stitch right to that edge. So I'm just like hanging at the edge when I lock it. And I want to make sure that I'm straight up here. I'm straight everywhere when I do that. So I'm going to lock it at the beginning. And then I want to make sure now. Remember, I changed my stitch length. So I need to put my stitch length back to where it was, which is 2.5. I'm also using a top stitch needle, 80. If an 80 makes too much noise, then use a 90 or a Microtech. 80, 12, or 90, 14. So when I start to get to this edge, I'm going to go slow. I want to make sure I'm still on the fabric, and I'm going to lock it. Then I can just flip over. Here's my other side. Again, I want to make sure I'm lined up across here, over here, the whole way. I want to put my foot down so I'm on the fabric. Lock. Go slow when I get towards that end. So I'm just hanging on. Lock it. Okay, now I'm going to open it up. And see, now it's not going to lay so flat because see how I've started to make, you can see the bowl starting to form. I'm going to fold it over. So there's my marking again. I want to make sure I'm straight in both places. Put my foot down so that I know my needle is on the fabric. And I'm already turning this towards going in the direction I need to go in. When I get to that edge, I'm going to slow down. For those of you that have a baby lock or a brother that have the dual pedal, you can set your pedal, one of your pedal functions, to take one stitch. So when you hit the pedal, it only goes one stitch, and that's a perfect time to use that. So now I'm just going to flip over. There's my mark again. I'm going to make sure I'm lined up here, lined up here. My fold's on this side. Slow down. Lock. I'm going to use my arms. I'm going to turn my iron on. Okay, so you can see how my bowl is starting to form. Now I'm going to do the other side, and I'm going to do it without stopping, just so that you can see that it really goes right along. Oh, see, I already marked it. So I have my marks done. So you would normally mark them both your pieces at the same time. So now I just have to stitch them. Guess I better look at this because I don't remember what I marked this when I did it yesterday. Oh, good. Good thinking. That's what happens when you stop in the middle of your bowl. I left this one so it's not quite to the edge, and let me see if I can. So you can see how this one is probably a little flatter, and this one has just a little bit. I'm not sure if you can see a little bit of a pucker. It'll be okay. But try to get as close to that edge as possible. It's hard to start on the edge because you want to get so close to it. It's much easier to start up here because part of the top will be in the seam allowance. The question was asked is if you want a deeper bowl, would you do bigger darts? Yes. Sometimes you can go wider, and if you want to go deeper, as in the depth, you might want a longer dart. And you can adjust that before you put your bowl together. So if it's not quite right, you can adjust it. So all 4 dots are done, so you can see that doesn't take much time. Now I'm going to move this for a minute. If I'm doing a narrow dart, I can't cut this open and lay flat. If I had narrow darts, I would have one dart going this way, and the one on this side will be going that way. But these are big enough so that I can come down right down the middle and almost miss the fabric, and almost to that end. It's about as far as your scissors will let you go. And I'm going to open that up. So let me go ahead and do all these. And I just want to make sure I get in between the fabric as well. And your scissors really won't let you get down in there too far, hopefully. And I'm just going to open this up. And what I do is I'm going to finger press them all open so that when I come around with the iron, this guy's a little skinny. I won't have to be fooling around and trying to hold the iron, fooling around with that and holding the iron at the same time. And you could use your roller. I don't know where mine is. So I'm just making sure that where I'm ironing is nice and flat. See if I can turn it more so you can see. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and grab the other one. This is a great project that if you had a layer cake that you used in a quilt and you had some pieces left over, they don't have to be the same front and back. They could be different colors. I'll be anxious to see what you girls post for pictures. And again, I'm just going to go around finger press first. And then come in with my iron. And I'm holding this up. I know you can't see as well. I'm holding that up just so I can keep the fabric that's under the iron where the dart is nice and flat. Okay. So there's our darts, nice and flat. We don't have to worry about trimming the threads or anything. So we're going to take and we're going to put right sides together. So I'm going to flip this guy right inside out. And then see how our bowl is coming along? So now I'm going to, this is going to take you a minute. So I have here 8 clips, 1 for each dart, 1 for each corner. So I want to make sure that I line my corners up. And you can pin or clip either way. And then I want to make sure I line my darts up, and I want to make sure that my back fabric is even with the front. And with these darts open, do you see how they're almost not much in the seam allowance, so it doesn't create a lot of bulk. When you do a smaller dart, you won't quite get that far away. And again, my next corner. Let me see which way I can do this. Trying to see which way you can see easier. I'm not worried about what's going on over here. I'm just lining everybody up. I'll line that up as I sew. So if you take out 8 pins or 8 clips, and you have any left over when you're done clipping and pinning, you know you've missed something. How's that? And each time, I'm making sure I bring this fabric up to match the front one. Okay? Then I'm just going to go around and try to get everything as flat as possible up around here. So I also need to have 2 pins. So I lost a pin. God, I'm being my foot sometime today. Let me find another one here. There we go. So I want 2 pins, and whether I used pins or I didn't, it doesn't matter. When I put 2 pins, there we go. When I put 2 pins in my fabric, I know, because I do this all the time, I know that's where I'm going to stop sewing. 2 pins together. Okay? Because you think you're going to remember, and then you go all the way around and you're headed back around like for the second time thinking this is taking a long time. So I want to put the 2 pins where I'm going to stop. So I don't want to start on an edge. I don't want to stop too close to an edge. So I'm going to come in a little ways here. And I know that our dart is there, but I find that if I go too close to this edge, it's hard to make that edge neat. So I'm going to come up maybe here. So I'm going to stop Let's see how far that is. 2 inches about? Yeah, about 2 inches from the edge. Okay, now I've done it so that I'm stopping here, but I really want to come around and stop here because I'm going to start here. Does that make sense? So see where I pinned here? I don't want to come around and stop here because then I'd only have this little bit. So I want to be from my left edge. I want to go in about 1.5 to 2 inches and put my 2 pins. So before you start sewing, when you put your 2 pins in, before you start sewing, just go, okay, I'm going to start sewing about here, and I'm going to go around and see if I did that. I ran into my 2 pins right away. I'm going to go all the way around, and here's where I'm going to stop. So just literally take your finger, go around, and okay, I'm starting here, I'm going around, and I'm stopping where my 2 pins are. Okay? So this, when I stitch, is going to come up a little bit because I want to keep this part nice and flat. When I stitch along, so say as I'm coming here, you see how I'm at this angle? So I don't want to fight this angle. I'm going to stitch down, stop, turn my fabric, and then stitch on to the end. The other thing I'm going to do is, and you can mark it, let me go ahead and mark mine. I'm going to curve the corner so that I don't have to fight so much with that end. So I'm just going to give myself a little curve. So when I come around, this edge is going to be with the edge of my foot. When I come around, I won't have this bunch to contend. When I come around, I won't have this bunch to contend with. This is not where I'm stitching because otherwise I'd have no seam allowance. But it's just for me to guide myself around that probably my foot, the edge of my foot will be about there. Okay? Now I want to look and see, okay, how much room do I need to turn? So I'm really trying to avoid having this dart in this open part. So maybe we'll come over to 1.5 inches, and I'll try it so you'll see. And I'm going to start stitching just before the dart. And I'm going to stitch forward 3, back 3, and then go, because this is going to have stress on it for me trying to pull this whole thing through this little hole. I'm using a little bit more than 1/4 inch seam allowance. So if you have a baby like a brother and you have your J foot on, or you have a Janome A foot on, you got your needle in the center, and I'm going to go along with the edge of my foot is at the edge of my ball. Then I'm going to go forward 3 and then back. So I'm not stitching in place this time. I want a little more reinforcement. Now let me see if I can, I'm going to see if I can fold that down for you. I'm going to go just past the seam of my dot, so I don't have my needle right in that seam. And I'm going to make sure I turn now so that my fabric is nice and straight this way. Then remember, I'm making a curve, and I'm kind of following that curve that I made. And I'm pretty close to stitching on it. I'll show you in a second. Then I'm going to straighten up, straighten again. Make sure my under part of my bowl is even. They're both even here. I want to make sure that I hold down my little flap of my dart so it goes under my foot. Doesn't, so see how can you see mine's flipping up here? So all I have to do is stop. I have pivot, so my foot came up. If yours doesn't, just pull your foot up and just tuck that dart under there. Stitch just past the dart seam. Turn. If you have to lift your foot, and start stitching again, making sure that everybody's lined up together. So I'm holding my two ends together, keeping everybody nice and flat. And I'm going to come around that curve again. Making sure that my underneath fabric is not running away that way on me, and it's trying to. Holding down the little flap of that dart. 1 or 2 stitches at the most past that dart seam. Lift your foot, or if you have pivot, just turn your foot. So now this is nice and flat. My underneath is matching up with my top. My 2 ends are together. I'm going to keep my finger right on them so they don't run away from each other. I curved around and I want to stop. Make sure that my fabrics are still lined up on this edge. And if I have to, I put my finger in between here. I'm holding the underneath one, this guy on top, a little tug, so that I can see that they're both right there. Stitch your ways. Get ready to work on the dart part. I'm going to flip this up a little bit. So I don't have to concern myself with, I don't know if you can see or not. When I come in, this part of the bow is really going at an angle. I don't care about that. I just care about getting to my dart and 1 stitch past. Just past that seam. Now I can just turn this so it's straight. And remember, here's my 2 pins. I'm coming up on my 2 pins, and boy, I made that little, I think that opening's a little too small. We'll find out. I'm coming around that corner, took my time. I'm going to take my 2 pins out, and I'm going to stop where the first pin was, the pin closest to the needle. And I'm going to stitch back and forth to reinforce that. Okay? So now what I want to do before I do anything else is I need to get rid of all that excess. So I'm just going to trim that off. So see how I have this whole bunch of excess up there? And here's where I made the mark. And I did pretty well. What can you see? I did pretty well stitch pretty close to that. If I had gone to the edge of my foot, my stitching would be way down here. So that just gives you something to go by. Now, I don't trim out my darts. I don't trim them down because I find when you trim something down close to the seam, it tends to show more when it gets on the other side, and I don't want that to show. If I have any places where I probably stitched a little more than I should have, can you see? Oh, you can't see there. Yeah. See how so I'm going to trim a little of that off. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find where my opening is. Where is it? Oh, well, all right. Is it so small I can't find it? Here it is. So here's my opening. It is pretty scary. I'm not sure how that's going to work. But what I want to do is I want to trim away the batting, but not the fabric of where that opening is. So I'm holding my batting away from my fabric and trimming it. And I'm going to do the other side. So I want to start before. So I want to start a little before the stitching and go a little past the stitching. And again, I'm trying to hold this so I'm trimming away basically the seam allowance of the batting. So you see that? Oops, sorry. So this is my seam allowance. So I've trimmed away the batting, and it doesn't have to be the prettiest. So now what I want to do is I want to fold this down even with my stitching, because this is going to make it easier when you line up to sew this when it's right side out. So I'm going to bring it forward, and it should fold about even with where your stitching was. And watch your fingers here. So you see how I pressed it down? And then I'm going to come to the other side. And you notice I turned my bowl, so I'm not fighting. I'm not fighting with all that. And again, I'm going to fold this back. And it should line up with the one that you folded before. And you can fold up into where the seam allowance was or past the stitching. That's okay. You can do this with anything that you turn right side out that you have to close up, because it's just easier. And I'm just going to go back and do a little more on this other side. And if you have your big iron and steam, that's good. Okay, so I have folded back both of these sides. See right here, there's my opening. Okay, now I'm going to reach in. I'm going to go to the furthest corner, and I'm going to have to take a drink first. I got to be ready for this. So I'm in at this end. I went over to the furthest corner. I'm going to push it in, and I'm pushing it with my finger to come out through that opening. So if you work from the furthest end, it's easier. Now, this might take me a little extra time because I really didn't make that opening very big, but it is big enough. And I'm just twisting around, going around and bringing it a little at a time. It's starting to look like a banana. Does anybody have any questions while you're... And now I'm just pushing that fabric that's out into the opening, but you just want to do a little at a time. And then look at there. We made it. So the first thing I want to do is that corner right where the opening is. And because I did that rounded, I really don't have to use my tool, but I can. Now I'm reaching in to this next corner, And I've got my thumb is all the way into that corner. Let me see if I can show you. So see, my thumb is to there. I'm going to put my finger here and I'm going to push out with my finger, and it brings that corner right out. And I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to reach in again. My thumb is down in where the corner is. There it is. I've got my finger right on top of my thumb, pinched them together, and push out with my finger. And look. Oh. And I think I got one more corner here somewhere. Nope, here it is. Nope, here it is. Did I get them all? Or just this last guy? If you need to go in with your turning tool, go ahead. Okay, and it's gonna feel like it's like puckery in this section, but it's gonna be fine. So the first thing I want to make sure I do, I'm going to use my turning tool and just make sure I go into each corner and just give it a little more. And you know, my turning tool, you see, it's rounded on the end. It's not pointed. And you can decide which is your inside, which is your outside. And again, I told you it's going to feel puckery here, but that's okay. Let me move my pins because I'm going to press that. The first thing I want to press is that. Now see where I had turned it and pressed it? You see how it stayed turned for the most part? So I'm just going to line those two fellas up there. And if I had my big iron, I'd really give it some steam because I really want to iron the bejeebies out of this edge because you've got all that batting and stuff there. I want to make sure that I don't, you see how this is making like a tunnel, like a little canal there. So if I have that problem, I'm going to open it up. So now this seam is flat. And I'm going to put it down so it's flat. And I'm going to iron that. And that will help you not have, so now when I bring it back together, it's not making that tunnel anymore. And I really want to make sure I put the iron and hold this up because that helps hold the bowl flat in that section. And I really, really want to iron with that dart, and that's all that seam is. And this is a job seems like every job I have lately is for a big iron. But I don't have, Sandy asked if Chuck made this tool. Yes, he did. He made me this tool. I use it for everything, but especially for turning because it's so nice and rounded and it's thin, but it goes in those corners really nicely, even if you have a pointed corner. I don't know if Lynn's on today or not. Rhonda, the turning tool came from Lynn's husband, Chuck. I'll talk to him and see if we can put a link up to if you're interested in getting one from him. Because I think that was a one of a kind at the time. But I'll find out and put the link in. Because, you know, he needs to be busy during this time, too. And I'm just going to slowly go around. Now, again, I'm getting that little tunnel thing going. Can you see what I mean? How this is making a tunnel of fabric? So I'm going to, let's see if I can. I'm going to pull the fabric this way, or I'm pulling the seam that way so that I can get in and see now I can lay this flat and flatten that seam out. And now when I put these together, I don't have that tunnel anymore. I'm getting a tunnel again. And I don't know if I have a good way for you. Let me see if I can zoom in a little. Oh, geez, that's hot. Okay, so you see how my seam is right here? And everything underneath it is flat. So I can go in, and I would really steam right on that. And it makes it nice and flat. And then when I pull them together, you see I have no more canal. So I want to go around the whole bowl, really pressing that edge good and flat, because it's, remember, there's batting in the seam allowance. Whoops, sorry, there's batting in the seam allowance. Let me back up again. Oh, there we go. Sorry, didn't mean to make you dizzy there. There's batting in the seam allowance. So you got like double batting. And you could trim some of it out, but a good press will take care of it. And again, I'm holding this up because the bowl doesn't want to, edges don't want to lay flat, so I have to bring it up like this for this edge to lay flat. And it would go quite a bit faster with your bigger iron. And if you have a little pucker in your dart, don't worry about it right now. And that's what I'm going in. I'm going in and getting those edges. Ow, hot. Ow. Well, that is hot. Iron's hot. I'll give it that, little fella. And I would have steamed this. This is a steam iron, but if I have it here and I tip it for anything reason, the water will come shooting out. So I'm trying to prevent my own issues. Okay, so I've given that a press, and I'm going to shut this little fella off, so pardon my fingers. Okay, so I've given it a press. So now what I want to do is, where's my spot with the, here it is. So I'm going to start near my spot where my opening is, right here. And I am going to put a little clip right there. And I'm going to start over here, so my opening's here. The reason I want to make sure I take care of near the opening first is so I don't forget about it and get too far away from it. And I don't want to start right on my dart area because that's a lot of fabric there. So I'm just going to start over here. And I'm going to stitch about right, oh, wait a minute, I'll show you. You see how I stitched fairly close to the edge. Now what I'm going to do is, I want to have as much fabric under my foot as possible. So I'm going to move my needle towards the edge of my foot. On my machine, let me see. So Baby Lock Brother, from the midline up, even the small Verve has it. We have left, right, shift, and it'll say L//R shift. And you can hit that left and right, and you move the needle just in little baby increments without changing your stitch at all. If you don't have that, then you can, if you're on straight stitch, you can change your width and that'll move the needle over on a machine that's like, say, a straight stitch only, not a straight stitch only because that only has a single hole. On a basic machine that might not have a mechanical machine, if you can move your stitch width when you're on a straight stitch, it'll just move your needle over. So I'm going to go ahead and do left, right, shift. And I went over to, in case anybody wants to know, I went to a +2. I'm going to see how that works. And now, see, because I put my clip there, I know that that's where my my opening is. So now this time when I lock, I'm going to lock in place because I don't want to see stitches back and forth on the top. So I'm going to start a little ways. Yeah, I'm going to start a little ways before the dart. So I'm about 2 inches before the dart. I'm going to put my foot down. So my fabric is running with the edge of my foot, but my needle, so here's my foot. My needle was in the center. Now my needle's moved over, but I can still have all of my fabric is under my foot, and that's what I want to have. So I'm going to lock in place, and then I'm going to stitch, and again, this is, see this curve. Don't worry about it. You're going to stitch, get just past that seam where the dart was, turn my fabric, it'll be straight again. And yeah, it'll make a little extra noise because you got a lot of stuff under there. But that's okay. That's why you may use a 90 top stitch or a microtex needle. And again, I'm stitching just a little past the dart, so now I can turn my fabric straight. And this is where my opening is, so I want to make sure everybody's lined up. Take my time coming around the corner. Now I ended up, I can see here, let me get a foot and show you. So instead of my fabric being at this very edge, it's a little bit like just inside, but under this part of the foot. It just naturally wants to come in a little bit, and that's fine. Again, stopping where the dart is, then turning my fabric. Taking my time, going around the bend. Again, making sure that this fabric is all laying nice and flat. And mine does feel a little thicker than normal, but because I didn't use a big steam iron on it. Rhonda, on the turning tool, before I forget, I should be able to, I think, come in and reply to your comment. I'll make a comment right in this video, but I'll also put something on Facebook about the turning tool. Again, took my time going around the corner. Stop after I get past the dart. Then I can straighten out again. Come around the corner. Now, before I get to the end, I'm going to come in and I'm going to cut my thread off. from where I started. And I'm just going to come a little ways over where I started originally. Okay? So see, there's where my opening was. Can you so I decided, well, that looks kind of skimpy. So I decided to do double stitching. Do you see how I did there? And all I did in this case is I took off my left-right shift. So my needle's back in the center. And then I ran my foot edge along my stitching of the first time. And I don't want to start and stop in the same place again, because that, to me, that just draws your eye to it. So I'm going to go someplace else. And now it doesn't matter because I've closed that seam, that opening, and so we're good to go there. So I'm going to just do a little quick lock. I want to make sure that my fabric remains flat, and the only way I can do that is for this to come up. Take my time if I'm on that area where the dart is. Come around to my curve, and I don't know if I can do this with, see, and I'm just taking my time. I'm stitching slow, turning my fabric as I go, and then I can just turn. Again, I want to make sure that I'm nice and flat, so I'm pushing this fabric away towards the middle. Slowing down at the curve again, taking my time, turning my fabric a little at a time until I get back on the straight, then just go straight again. Again, I'm pushing my dart in. So Jane says she's stitching right along with me, and her opening isn't as pretty, and she said she's glad it's not her prom dress, because that's our saying. It's not your prom dress, let it go. By the time you make a few of these, if you have trouble with that opening, then do a little bit bigger seam. So go to almost a 1/2 inch. And if you feel your seam is making your bowl mitt too small, then cut it a little bigger. So cut it 10 1/2 and do a 1/2 inch seam, because when you do a bigger seam, it's easier where that opening is to press it. Denise, no fabric glue if it's going in the microwave. So a lot of times I close things with steam machine, a little piece of steam machine, but you can't do that if it's going in the microwave. So if you're giving it as a gift and you're not sure, just tell them it's for when they take it out of the microwave, and don't tell them to use it, that they can use it in the microwave. And you'll be safe. Again, I stopped at the dart area, right after the dart area, readjusted. Coming around the corner again. Then I forgot to cut my thread from the first time, so now I'm going to try to get in there and cut it without cutting the one I'm sewing on with. Almost forgot what I was doing there for a minute. Okay, so you can see there's where I stopped and started, right in here somewhere. So I just went over the stitch and maybe by 2 stitches. And again, you can give it a press again. And you're good to go. And there's your bowl. So now we have 3 sizes of depth. And you see you see which way it likes to go better. So can you see the depths of this one and the depths of this one? So can you see the difference? So this was 1 inch in on the top, and I think I went down almost 2, but maybe between 1 3/4 and 2. This one was 1/2 inch in and 1.5 inches down. So now we have, well, that one fits in there. It's kind of pretty when you have the 2 of them. Look. So there's the 3 different sizes we did. So you can do it to, you know how you get those bowls even at the dollar store or some of the home goods and that, and they're kind of like a fancy bowl. So you can match it up to the depths of that bowl. Okay, so everybody get their pencil and paper ready. So these were all made from a 10-inch square, nothing different there. And you quilted them all the same. It's in the darts. This one, because I have a couple of very shallow bowls, this one, excuse me, was 1/2 inch in. And what I mean is 1/2 inch in. Hold on. Let me move that for a second. So let me fold this guy up, just so we get a good visual here. Let me come in a little closer with the camera. There we go. And I'm not sure. Oh, sorry. The light out on you. Okay. So after we did our quilting, we're folding it in half. So we're talking about, remember, the fold is to the right, fabric to the left. So I'm here. The shallowest one was 1/2 inch over, marked here, and 1.5 inches down this way, connecting them. So 1/2 inch over, 1.5 inches down, and then connecting them. Oh. Okay. The next size, okay, so that's this one. The one we did today, I went over 3/4 of an inch. So 3/4 of an inch from right to left, and then down 1 3/4. Okay, and then this one, it's my new favorite one. This one is I went over from right to left over a full inch and down 1 3/4 inches, almost 2 inches. It was kind of like in between, because all of a sudden I thought, well, 2 inches, that seems like a lot, because that part brings this part deeper here. The other part brings the top measurement brings the bowl in, and the depth comes from how deep your darts are. So the last one, the deepest one, was 1 inch over, right to left, and 1 3/4 inches, maybe a little bit more, but not quite to the 2. And again, you just do it to your bowl, because once you put the darts in one piece before you put it all together, you can see. And if you need to bring it in more, bring it in more. And just test it out. Whenever you make something and you're not sure how you want it to look or fit or whatever it is, You just have to tell yourself it's okay if I have to pull these stitches out, because you can't tell what it's going to be until you actually stitch it. So stitch it and be done with it. If that makes sense to you. I've just learned that instead of fretting over taking some stitches out, I'd rather take the stitches out and knowing I got the fit or the look I want than fret over it and be miserable about it. So do we have any questions? I'm going to wait just a second or two because I don't know how fast. I know this has a little delay from when I talk to when you hear me. So I'll just wait a second or two. And next week, I'm going to do a little project, quilt as you go. If you're going to sew along with me, I'll assume some people are going to sew along with me. So I will put some fabric measurements and so forth out. We'll be working with strips. And if it's a small project, we'll just do little strips. And I think I might use some of this fabric. I have more fruits and vegetables than you can imagine. And I've had them for years and years and years. I think that I'll take some of this fabric for our little quilt as you go project. So maybe I'll do something that can kind of go with this and we'll just get some kind of whole set going on. How's that? So Sandy was asking, what do you call it? I guess because it's not an oven mitt, so I decided it's a bowl mitt. So bowl cozy, I guess the cozy goes around, bowl mitt. You can call it whatever you like. Bowl blanket. If you guys come up with a good name, just put it under the comments so everybody can see it. You're welcome, Gloria. So everybody go ahead and finish up if you're stitching. You can see how fast it is. If you're going to give them for a gift, I say give them 4 or 6 if you really like them a lot. Sometimes I just do 2. I have a friend of mine, he goes fishing and brings me fresh fish, so I'll probably make him 4. But sometimes I just make 2, depends who it is. You're welcome, Linda. So everybody have a great day. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next Saturday at 11. My goal for this week is to learn how to send out a reminder through YouTube somehow. I haven't figured that out yet. So I probably will be doing a live during the week because I like to test that out to see if it actually works. And would you be kind enough to put your pictures up in Facebook on the bowl post so that everybody else can see what you've done? Because a lot of people, we like to see what each other use for fabrics because people use fabrics we hadn't thought about. I dug these out from I call it my inventory now. I dug these out from my inventory, and I really like them. And I really forgot that I had the oranges. I knew I had some others, but I didn't know I had some oranges. And I think I'll do another project for steaming your potato in the microwave. So make sure you hang on to your wrap and zap so you have some left over. It's going to take a piece 10 by 20, I believe it is. But I'll leave you some info on that on the Facebook. So everybody say bye to everybody. I can hear you all saying bye. And we'll see you next week.